Good morning, friends. Hello. How are you this morning? Hope you're doing well. Good morning, everyone. Hello, hello. Hey, Vet, good morning to you. Good morning, everybody. Hello. How are you? Hey, Donna, good morning to you. Irene, good morning. How are you, friends? Glad you're here. It is a new day. Hey, Jamie, happy birthday to your big bro. Nice. Good morning, Karen. Glad you're here. Good morning, everybody. Donna, doing good. That's great. That's good to hear. Everyone is finding a good day today. Good morning, everybody. How are you? Great to see you. All right, let's get going this morning on this, the 20th day of September, if you can believe it. That on this Tuesday, and welcome back for another week as we step into 11:11. I'm glad you're here. It's glad to see your name and your little digital faces popping up. Hey, John, good morning to you. I'm so glad that you're a part of this journey, every one of you, wherever you are, wherever you're engaging it, wherever you are part of that, that you are giving yourself to something hopefully great and good in your life. That these little moments are incredibly beautiful little moments of hopefully nourishment for you. Maybe you get something out of this. We'll hope for that. But also that you might that in that creating space in this creating moment, you might give yourself something as well. And largely, I think it is the permission for God to spend a little more time with you. You see, I think there's a funny thing that happens when we show up here. Whether you spend some time as the discipline of showing up at 11:11, and I am grateful for every one of you. Hey, Jane and John, I'm glad you're here. That as you gather, there's this way in which we come to encourage each other and to be with each other and to see that there's other people out there with us in this fight. And whether you're watching online and maybe you can't comment or whatever, or you're not going to comment, you don't want to, whatever, you're connected to this thing. And that part of that is, again, hopefully you'll get something worthwhile out of it. But the second part is that you're making space. You're taking a little part of your day and you're making space for something good to come into it, which I think you're making space. I mean, if we think, I think this is a very deep and real theological reality that we're about. So, I mean, I'm not even talking about what we're going to talk about today, but I'm talking about how we're talking about what we're going to talk about today. You never know what you're going to get. Here it is, a new week. I'm all fired up. So but you really are. You're making space. There's all the million things. You have the entire internet at your disposal. You could be watching kitten videos right now. You could be doing anything else, but instead you are listening to my voice, creating a little space for God's love and God's grace and goodness to flow in. You see, that's the thing about this. That when we tune into these frequencies, when we tune into these channels, when we open ourselves up, not only do we hear the music that is made, but that the music changes us, doesn't it? For you musicians out there, I don't even claim myself to be a musician. I'm just a guy who bangs on a ukulele occasionally. But even when that happens, there's this way in which when the 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 bones in your ears rattle from the pressure waves that hit your head, you are changed. Well, friends, that the great and beautiful song of creation in which God is singing to you every moment and every second is opening you to that change. And it's my contention, and this is where I want to get to today, is to talk a little bit about heroes. I think we don't talk enough about our heroes. We don't talk enough about the heroic, and we don't talk enough about our heroes. We should, on a regular basis, talk about those who have inspired us, those whose song has resonated not just by banging the ear bones in our head, but has resonated with our soul and showed us something that we couldn't see before, that made a space in this world for something good and true and beautiful, for the heavenly to come into our midst. These people who have been like Christ and being incarnational in the world. Talking about the book of Hebrews, and again, remember this book is to an oppressed population, a bunch of people who are being beat up and beat down, and the advice from the author of Hebrews, possibly the best written book in the Bible. I mean, there are scholars who make that contention that it's that beautiful and that powerful and that theologically tight and that encouraging. And they say this, it says this from the 13th chapter, 7th verse. He says, remember those who led you, who spoke the word of God to you, and considering the result of their conduct, imitate their faith. Sometimes it's hard to know what to do. Sometimes it's hard to know the right movements and the right ways in which to proceed in the world. Sometimes it's easy to know the right thing to do. It's just hard to do it. But wherever we find ourselves, it is my belief that even no matter how old we are, there are people in this world that both have been heroes to us, that have taken up the heroic journey, and whether we know them or not, sometimes there are personal ones to you, and sometimes there are ones far off in the distance, but that separated by time and space, but that their story sings to you of something powerful and beautiful and changes you as you hear it. I keep butlers nearby all the time because I find this a great inspiration to me. The whole experience of so Butler's Lives of the Saints. It is the saint it has saints for every day as laid out in the church, as in the traditional church. And, we could, that in the congregational way, we don't necessarily venerate saints in the way that the more Orthodox and Catholic traditions do. But that doesn't mean we have to throw babies out with bathwater. That veneration, to me, veneration can get weird. Veneration can get confusing. The difference between worship and veneration and all that. I mean, not that it's wrong. It's just why. But to hear the story of another that has persevered, that has overcome, that has done something that I might never dare to do, that has offered me, and that in their story they offer me something of the music of the universe, something of music of what is really real, what is truly true, the song of the Logos to sing into my heart. Those moments, those people, those stories are the ones that we rest on in the course of our days. I mean, we're inspired and we're held by these people and we don't even know it. One of my favorites is one that's out there is a woman by the name of Prudence Crandall. Now, if you're from Connecticut, you might know Prudence Crandall, but nobody knows who Prudence Crandall is. But in 1831, Prudence Crandall, to much acclaim and much aplomb, started the first women's school in Canterbury, Connecticut. And so she was going to educate young ladies to become teachers. And this private enterprise that was so needed because educators were even in the early 19th century were still highly prized and highly needed and highly necessary, and there just simply weren't enough of them. And so she began to gather young ladies to begin to learn to become school teachers. And the town came out in droves. She was a true hero to the town. They 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 lauded her. They made sure that the mansion she had taken a mortgage out on in order to support her school and would be the place of residence where these young women would come learn was well appointed. That she just done this incredible thing. She was not a woman of means. She didn't have a lot of money. She said simply ambition and hope. And Prudence Crandall, in 1832, a year later, after this wonderful warm reception in Connecticut, ended up getting an application letter from another young woman, an African American young woman, and her parents. A freed slave, or not a freed slave, but a freed black person, and as her parents were, and who was interviewed by Prudence Crandall and was found to be an exceptional candidate in all rights. Now, Prudence Crandall had some choices to make about whether she would admit this young woman, about what she would do. But her convictions were real. And her convictions were deep. That she believed in education, and she believed it in a way that few in her time did. That she opened the very world to rely upon her convictions. And so she decided that not only would she take in this student, but that she would start a whole nother wing of the school for the education of young black women that would come from all over the world. Now, William Lloyd Garrison, who was one of the great abolitionists of the day, got word of this, and in his newspaper in Boston began printing this. And it wasn't long before she became a known figure throughout, from Georgia to Maine, that young black women seeking education would find a place in Canterbury, Connecticut. As she was deliberating on what she would do, or whether she would take in her first young student, she wrote this. She said, "I said in my heart, here are my convictions. What shall I do? Shall I be inactive and permit prejudice, the mother of all abominations, to remain undisturbed? Or shall I venture to enlist in the ranks of those who with the sword of truth dare hold combat with prevailing iniquity?" I contemplated for a while the manner in which I might best serve the people of color. As wealth was not mine, I saw no other means of benefiting them than by imparting to those of my own sex that were anxious to learn all the instruction I might be able to give, however small the amount. Prudence Crandall would go on to be run out of town. There would be violence. There would be a lawsuit. She'd be thrown in jail. That in fact, it would go to the Connecticut Supreme Court at one point, and eventually that the black residents of Connecticut and other states actually weren't full citizens. This is before any of the great juries and the great verdicts that would come out in the prelude to the Civil War. This was 30 years prior to that. But they would be in the fight to say that even then African Americans were not people, or not, certainly not citizens in full standing, no matter their status of free or slave. That was the Declaration of the State of Connecticut in 1833. Look it up. Now, Prudence Crandall stood in resistance to that. She stood and eventually succumbed even. She had no choice. It was that or pretty much prisoner of death. And so she continued to be an educator. She continued to move. She moved to Massachusetts. She actually ended up going west and continuing to teach. And even later in life, she lived until 1890. She would go on to found other institutions and other places to teach young women of all colors their ability to be teachers in their own right. Prudence Crandall, even in her failure in 1995, would become the heroine of Connecticut. That's her actual title, that the legislature in 1995 actually voted to say that a daughter of Connecticut, of the state of Connecticut, as the heroine of Connecticut, and they claimed it was Prudence Crandall, and they put it that in 150 years later, they would come to the fact and come to the recognition of the wisdom and the strength and the power of this young woman, who in her late 20s, early 30s, would stand against the entire machine of state politics within her world and the entire wrath of racism that was in early America. You've probably never heard of Prudence Crandall. I just stumbled across Prudence Crandall. And yet, we all know, even though it took 150 years later, there's this way in which that it came back even to the state of Connecticut, that Prudence Crandall was amazing and was significant and told us things of the really real, told us things of the truly true, told us things of what was right and right beyond our own saying so, beyond our own creation, but things that were truly proper and correct and true in the equality of all human beings. Now, there's a million other people, millions of other people, with heroic qualities, with heroic lives, with heroic stories, which you and I are a part of, which our very lives have been shaped by. That the world was changed by what Prudence Crandall did. And friends, the world too can be changed by what we do. And we don't have to go do what Prudence Crandall did. Her call was for her place in her time and in her way. But at the same time, we too, because we stand on the shoulders of giants, because we stand on the shoulders of heroes, because we stand with those who would stand for the true and the good and the beautiful, we too have the chance, the opportunity in our own small and broken way, even to be defeated. I love Prudence Crandall's story because it is a story not of, and then she changed everybody's minds. It's not like it came out of a Hollywood casting. It's actually a story of defeat in many ways, but it was never a story. It may be a story of destruction, but not a story of defeat. Because she goes on and continues to educate and continues to inspire and continues to tell her story and continues to, in her own small way, combat what, as she calls it, the mother of all abominations. Now, I can't tell you what your heroes are whispering to you. I can't tell you what the Holy Spirit and all the angels and all the saints that came before us would whisper to you before you lay your head on the pillow and before your eyes close. In those moments when you would drift off to sleep, the things that would convict your soul, the things that would convict your heart, the things that would convict your life, I can't tell you what those are. But I think if we tend to our heroes, if we tell the stories of those that inspire us, both the far off ones and the ones that have been right in our grill, that we've had the privilege to walk out some of our life with and bear witness to, wherever they are and wherever you find them, that we might take the same courage that the early church in Jerusalem took from the author of Hebrews, that we might remember those who led us, who spoke the word of God to us, and considering the result of their conduct, we might imitate their faith. Friends, the world, when we start to look at it, is full of heroes. It is full of great stories of overcoming. It is filled with great stories of defeat, and yet the heroic itself bearing witness in it and beyond it and through it. Ernest Hemingway wrote in one of the greatest modern parables of all time, The Old Man and the Sea. He said, a man can be destroyed, but not defeated. We shall all battle with monsters that rise up from the deep and seek to consume us. We will all battle with sharks that will seek to nibble away at the goodness and the grace and the love of all that is and all that might be. We will all contend with great storms in our life. But at the heart, we are filled. Our hearts resonate when we make space for them, of the stories of those who came before us that were not destroyed, or maybe were destroyed, but were never defeated. Friends, it's my hope for you today is that you might spend a little time with the story of one of your heroes and hear the whispers of the angels for the work in your life, because we could be heroes. All right, peace and grace to you, my friends. We'll pick it up tomorrow with another 11:11.